Hello and welcome to the GrapeSEED Official Podcast. With episode 100 coming next week, we have moved up the next installment in the Take a Step series to here, episode 99. As always, this series is about taking a look at a specific GrapeSEED component and looking at its quick checks and learning objectives overall before diving into the day-to-day lesson plans to see how each step we take helps us fulfill those big picture goals. If there are directions in the lesson plans for other components that assist us in achieving the goals of our focus component, we will mention them too. As we are on the 5th installment in this series, we are up to Unit 5 now. There are a lot of great components to choose from here, but in the interest of keeping things unique and fresh, we will focus on the chant in the unit for a change. Yes, I am. We will start with general context. If you remember from foundation training and/or GrapeSEED Essentials, chants primarily help our students learn how to participate in conversations. Many curricula encourage the teacher to ask students questions, which we also do in GrapeSEED. Students then get a lot of practice answering questions, but don't usually get much in the way of practicing asking them. With the chants in GrapeSEED, we give students the valuable practice they need in asking questions as well. A conversation is a two-way street. Both parties asking and answering questions. If students are only ever answering questions, the dialogue is more like an interrogation than a real conversation. Chants in GrapeSEED start in Unit 3 with Yes It Is and continue into Unit 4 with Yes I Can. Here in Unit 5, we introduce another unique question and answer pattern with Are You questions and Yes I Am, No I'm Not answers. Since students have had two different chants so far already, they'll subconsciously know the routine when you introduce this new one. You won't need puppets to act out the dialogue to demonstrate that the chant is a conversation like you might have in Unit 3. On the other hand, here in Unit 5, your students are usually still in their first year of GrapeSEED and are probably all 5 years old by this point, towards the end of the school year. They are still very young and building their English foundation. Adding a third chant with the unique question and answer pattern will likely result in students mixing up their questions and answers as they begin to identify the target expressions and then later begin to use them. You have probably noticed this in Unit 4 when you asked, "What can you see?" questions and got back some "Yes it is" answers initially. Students will need a lot of practice before they are comfortable with these new expressions, especially if you occasionally ask questions using language from the Unit 3 and Unit 4 chants. We can trust in the spiral curriculum design. Even if students haven't completely mastered the target expressions from the chant by the end of the unit, they will come back around and give students more practice in later units. This is especially true here in the chant for Unit 5. With Unit 3, we had a chant confirming what different objects or rooms were. Is this a snack? Yes, it is. No, it isn't. With Unit 4, we had a chant confirming what can be seen. Can you see a black crow? Yes, I can. No, I can't. With both of these chants, the expressions students were using from the chant were new, but creating unique and interesting questions was relatively simple. They have learned so many nouns so far that even outside of class, you could easily ask your students questions using that language. Is this a pointer? Can you see a red slide outside? So how is Unit 5 any different? Let's look at the target expression and think about it. What are you? Are you a... With the answers, yes I am, no I'm not. The contexts in which you would use this question and answer are not as broad as their Unit 3 and Unit 4 counterparts. This is great language you and students can use if you are playing a guessing game where maybe you as the teacher are describing yourself and students have to guess what you are. For example, I am big and round and orange, what am I? And students can ask, are you a pumpkin? This expression is also useful to talk about feelings and emotions, but students don't have a lot of those yet from GrapeSEED. They probably have sad and happy, and maybe you have exposed them to sleepy and hungry. The main point here is that it is a lot harder to come up with questions on your own in the moment that will align to the learning objectives themselves, while also keeping in mind the vocabulary and expressions students are able to use this early in GrapeSEED. It's lucky there's an entire curriculum team dedicated to working all of that out for you with the teacher manual and the lesson plans. Let's look at the quick checks before we move into the lesson plans themselves. Early exposures. Are students beginning to understand the question, are you a? Middle exposures are students beginning to understand how to respond to the questions, what are you, and are you a? Finally, end exposures. Can students respond to the questions, what are you, and are you a? The language used in these quick checks is important. With some GrapeSEED stories, you might see an end exposure quick check like, can students more fully answer questions using the language? More fully being the focus. But here in this chant, even in the end exposures, it is, can students respond? You can rest assured that we will be coming back around to this in future units. For now, we are introducing the expressions and focusing on them, but if students don't have them mastered by the end of the unit, we are totally fine. Let's crack open these lesson plans. We start with the chant right from Lesson 1. Before we even read through the chant, we are instructed to ask, what are you? Are you a grape? We are told not to expect more than a simple yes or no as a response. Here is another good example of how thinking through how you will actually teach these lesson plans in your prep time is so critical. If you grab the teaching cards for the chant and just robotically stand there and ask your students a suggested question, it is likely they won't respond. Why is that? They are unfamiliar with your question.
Goodbye, my friends, goodbye. I'm sad to say goodbye. It was a good day, but now I will say goodbye, my friends, goodbye. Goodbye, everyone.